There we go. You should get your little warning thing saying you're being recorded. And let's see. So today we're going to be learning about Jews from the Caribbean, mostly, but not entirely Sephardic. Um, Todd is a wonderful person. He is Deputy Genealogical Officer at Family Search, which is the genealogy arm of the LDS Church. He's very active in genealogy in general and became active with Jewish genealogy when he discovered that his great-grandfather was born Jewish and then became a member of the church. And I've worked with him on a committee, and he's an awesome person all the way around. And I am thrilled to welcome Todd, and I will shut up and let Todd talk.
Janice, thank you very, very much. Let me share the screen here so we can, please let me know if you get that, if you see that.
I see it.
Okay, that's the key. Well, thank you, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for taking time out of your morning to join us. So what we're going to be talking about today is Jews of the Caribbean, um, which ties in very much to early U.S. Jewish communities. It's hard to find an early Jewish community in the U.S. that didn't have strong ties to the Caribbean pre 1880ish. They were mostly all tied to the Caribbean, and so it's an amazing thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll get into that. I just want to give you a couple of quick examples. Let's see if we have this working here. So let's talk about the Gomez family. In 1792, under a buttonwood tree at 68 Wall Street in New York City, 24 brokers gathered and signed the Buttonwood Agreement. That would eventually lead to the creation of the New York Stock Exchange. One of those 24 was Isaac Gomez. Isaac was born in New York City. His mother was the daughter of people from Barbados. His father's father married Rebecca de Torres, daughter of Joseph and Zima de Torres of Jamaica. She died, and then he married Esther Levy of Curacao. Other ancestors, as you can see, were from Jamaica and Barbados. All of these, this is a prominent early family in the US, one of the founders of the New York Stock Exchange, and here they are of Caribbean descent, Caribbean Jewish descent through multiple countries. It's an amazing family. Let's just give one or two more of these. Here's Isaac Harvey. He writes, my ancestors fled to Spain and then to Portugal, where they remained until the pestilence of the Inquisition drove them to Africa. I find my grandfather Isaac Harvey about the middle of the 18th century employed in the business of a lapidary at Fez in Morocco, and in his barbarian majesty's good confidence. Of this issue, 6 children were born, the youngest of whom was Solomon, my father, born in London in 1762. Solomon Harvey immigrated to America and remained there 3 years at Jamaica from 78 to 81. He married Rebecca Moses as Charleston in 1787. She was the daughter of Meyer Moses, a rich and patriarch Israelite who assisted his country during the Revolutionary War. So he is descendant of people who came from uh, Spain and Portugal, ended up in Jamaica, and then he married a woman from Charleston. Charleston was a strong Caribbean Sephardic influence. In fact, up until probably 1880, Charleston had the largest Jewish population in the United States, larger than New York City. That obviously didn't stay that way, but they were the largest community in the United States, a Sephardic community influenced heavily by the Caribbean. Another one, I didn't put it in here, but another one that shows the example that the early Caribbean and Sephardic Jews played in America is if you go to the Statue of Liberty, that famous quote at the bottom, give me your poor, you're tired, and so forth, was written by a Jewish woman whose family is all Caribbean. So it's amazing the influence, the early influence that our Jewish communities from the Caribbean had on the United States of America. So we're going to use this to talk. This is the Family Search website, the front page. And the search tab at the top is kind of where everything's going to come from today. I wanted to show Caribbean records as you can find them at Family Search to help you in your search. And so we're going to use this. And yes, there's no handout because Family Search is constantly updating everything. Sometimes I release a handout before you have a chance to even look at it, it's outdated. So what I'm going to do is at the end, you'll see my email address and you can email me, and I would love you to do so with any questions, comments, whatever it may be. But everything's going to come off the search tab at the top. And when you click on it, it drops down to these categories that we will talk about today. But first, let's mention the actual library itself, Family History Library in Salt Lake City. So the family history, these are the numbers as of the end of 2023. I don't have updated beyond that yet. 2.4 million rolls of microfilm are in our collection. Over 194,000 microfiche cards, 600,000 books, 17,000 maps from all over the world, records from over 110 countries, representing more than 170 languages. Some of those countries don't even exist any longer. Free access to dozens of websites. So you go to a family history center, family search center in your area, you can get access to those websites as well. But what does Family Search have? Here's the key. It's got over 13 billion searchable names where you can go in and search by name for your ancestors. And it has 5.2 billion digital images. When you think about that, those digital images, that doesn't all included in the 13 billion searchable names. And I'll show you some of those images on why they're not included there. But it's an incredible collection. And again, it all comes from that search tool right there. So let's start just by going into the search, and let's go down to the bottom. I want to do the bottom one first because the Research Wiki is a place that if you do nothing else, if you find no other point out of this whole discussion today, I hope it's that you'll start using the Research Wiki because it can tie everything back together. So if you click on Research Wiki, this is what you get. It's a map of the world. You can click on the map. If you know the area you want, you can just click on that part of the world here and it'll take you to it. But I'm just going to type in Jamaica. And if I type in Jamaica, what comes up is this is the Jamaica genealogy page in the wiki. And you'll see on the far right, it's got information. There's the flag, so you know where you're at. But then it's got a list of record types and Jamaica background and so forth. You will not see a category listed here unless there is something in the wiki in that category. So where it says record types, cemeteries, that means there are types in here that are cemeteries. There are things in that tab where you can go to and view information or view those records. And so if it's there, we have something. You'll notice on the front there is a map. These maps are interactive. So you can click on the map and it will bring up records specifically for that county or parish or city, wherever you may be in the world. The maps are interactive, so it will guide you there too. But what I want to point out here on this Jamaica page is this blue bar here where I have the arrow pointing down to it. And these are Jamaica online genealogical records. So if I click on that, it takes me to a list of records that are available online. Now, what you're going to notice first from this, some of them, let's just go to the very top one. You read the Jamaica Church of English Parish Registers transcripts, gives you the years, and then it says index, and there's a $sign. The reason there's a $sign is you may have to pay a fee when you go into that website. This is a link to that website. It's taking you out of Family Search to another website, but they have a collection that would fit in those things. Now, I know what you're saying, Todd, we don't need the Church of England Parish Register transcripts, but I'm going to show you something in a little while that it's worth keeping in mind all of these other Church of England, whatever it may be. But that $sign means you may have to pay a fee. Now that collection is held at MyHeritage. That's why. If you have an MyHeritage account, you're good to go. If it's free, there will be no $sign. So like everything from Family Search is free because we don't charge. So if it's got a $sign, you'll need to know there may be a fee involved. Now, if you go to your local Family Search Center, you can access these without the fee. We have agreements with them, Ancestry, MyHeritage, so forth. We have agreements with them. You can go there and you can access these. So if you go, all those are great websites. Well, now down at the very bottom, you'll notice a blue arrow, and I have one highlighted there, Jamaica Compiled Genealogy. So if we go to that, and here's the page for compiled genealogies. It is strictly that. It is families that either written a tree, written a history, have documented whatever it may be about the family. And you'll notice about 5 down, there's the Delgado family. Well, if you click on that again, it takes you to a digital book. And we're going to talk about books in a minute. It's fascinating, but so it's a free digital book. You just click where it's highlighted red, and you click where that arrow's pointing there, and it takes you to the book. This is a history of the Delgado family, Jamaica, West Indies, with branches in the United States and the United Kingdom, 1750 to 1985. Now, what's fascinating here is because we have the book digitized, and yes, we will talk about the digital books in a few minutes, but because we have the book digital, there where the arrow points, where it says view all 99 pages, you can click on that and it will take you to the actual book, just like you're seeing in the library reading it. Now, this is a screenshot of one page. And as you'll notice, if you start reading it, it says the Jewish Delgado family flourished in Jamaica, da, 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 da. And it goes on and on. But if you were reading this online right now and not on this screenshot you're seeing, you would see a small white arrow on both sides of the screen. And all you do is click on that arrow to go forward a page or back a page. So you can read the entire book online from your home. It's wonderful. And in a case like this where it's free, one of the nice benefits of this, let's say you're sitting in your home and you say to yourself, I really think my brother or my sister should see this as well. Call them, get them to log in. They can click on this. You can read the book together. You can say, look at page 9 or page 10 and see what you can find there, because you can collaborate. These books are available. They're online. They're free. You can go there. You can read it together. You can use it, that way. So it's a great source. So keeping all this we just talked about in mind, let's talk about what we're going to discuss today. Now that we've gotten some of the preliminary out of the way, we're going to talk about the history of Jewish settlement in the Caribbean, the major Jewish communities, the genealogical records of the major communities, the historical influence of the Caribbean Jews, and some other helpful resources that we'll talk about. So let's start with Jewish settlement in the Caribbean. Now, a lot of people are totally, I don't know what the word is, amazed when they hear how early the Jewish settlement in the Caribbean is. Just to keep it in mind here, there were 5 fairly large Jewish communities just on the island of Jamaica before the Mayflower landed at Plymouth Rock. And that was just one country. There was a lot of Jewish communities throughout the Caribbean long before the Mayflower. It began with the expulsion from Spain and Portugal in 1492. When they left Portugal in 1492, many fled to Portugal, assuming they would find some safety there. Within 5 years, there was another Inquisition in Portugal where the government expelled them and those who had lived there for years. Jews found safety in North Africa, Constantinople, Amsterdam, and London. Some also traveled to Brazil, which was a Portuguese colony. And the problem with that is if you're fleeing the Inquisition in Portugal and you go to Brazil, which is a Portuguese colony, Portugal then had their own Inquisition, if you will, a little later, couple of decades later, which forced everyone to leave again. But the fact that there was so much freedom in Amsterdam and London specifically was actually a very it was a blessing for our Jewish families. They were able to go there. There's a lot of Sephardic influence in Amsterdam, in London, because of the fact that they were welcome there, as opposed. I think the greatest example, I think it's fair to say that Sephardic and Ashkenazic Jews back then didn't always cooperate or get along as well as we'd like. And in London, they got along so well that the two the word's lost my mind. The main synagogues of the Ashkenazic synagogue and the Sephardic synagogue were next to each other. They shared a fence. They were there together, and it's just amazing how well they got along and how much influence there is there. So let's start with something. So the Netherlands won independence from Spain in 1581. After being under the control of the Catholic Habsburgs, the new Dutch government showed religious tolerance for all religions, including the Jews. In 1588, the British defeated the Spanish Armada, which began to weaken Spain's economy. With Spain's power being weakened, other European powers began looking to establish themselves in the New World. The Netherlands, trying to secure world trade, began shipping to the Caribbean via the Dutch West Indies Company. So that's really what started the main flowing through the Caribbean, was places like the Dutch West Indies Company that were ready to expand their horizons, if you will. So let's talk about a few of the major Jewish communities. Let's go to Suriname first. There's the map, flag. Suriname started having the Jewish communities arrive in 1630 as they arrived from Holland and from Italy. Now, the Jews who had left Spain and Portugal and then went to Brazil started arriving in Suriname in about 1650 after they were driven out there for the most part. 1684, the group arrives. It was under the leadership of David Nassi. 1665, they gained freedom of religion and the ability to plant and trade, which was huge. It gave them an opportunity to provide themselves with something they could trade themselves. Given land for a synagogue and a burial ground. Then Suriname, then English, surrenders to the Dutch fleet. In 1672, the first synagogue is built. So that synagogue is 350 years old. 1719, a new synagogue was consecrated, and the new Portuguese synagogue was dedicated in 1737. Now, a long history, but they also left some beautiful records to go with it. So here, this is a fascinating record. For those of you who do a lot of genealogical research, this is very unusual, I think. So this is Suriname Births and Deaths is the name of the collection in the Family History Library. Dates back to 1662 and it goes to 1867. But where you have birth registers where they're done in date order. You have a birth, you record the birth. The next person born is recorded right after that. In these records in Suriname, they were recorded by first name. These are all daughters named Esther. You'll see as you go down that list, different parents, quite a few years. There's about 5 years covered here on this page. So it's different parents, or all children with the same name. So every surname or every name given to a child is going to have its own page. Esther's going to have a page. Solomon's going to have a page, something like that. It's not in order by date of birth. So it's a little more confusing sometimes to put all the records of a family together. If you know roughly how old the kids were, but you're not sure the name, you may have to go through a few records to get them. But you can see all these have different surnames on the families, the parents, and so forth. It is nice because these records give you the mother's maiden name as well. So it's a beautiful record. It's just in a little different format than we're used to. let's go to St. Thomas. St. Thomas is a fascinating place. I love St. Thomas. So St. Thomas, there's the synagogue. The first Jews came when St. Thomas, in 1655, St. Thomas was under the control of Denmark. In 1685, the Jews were given religious freedom, which led to an increased number of Jewish settlers. In 1796, the first synagogue was established on St. Thomas. As of 1801, there were only 9 families that belonged to the congregation, not a huge congregation. Keep that in mind because I'm going to show you some records in a minute that I still can't understand. But arrivals from France and England, as well as from Curacao, increased the population to 22 families. So in 5 years, they went from 9 families to 22 families. In 1804, the fire destroyed the synagogue and it was replaced in 1812. In 1823, growth required the second synagogue be taken apart and replaced by a third. That synagogue was destroyed by fire in 1831. In 1833, the synagogue was rebuilt and was home to 60 families. So in that 40-year time frame, they went from 9 families, a 30-year time frame. They went from 9 families to 60 families. Doing it, they went through 3 synagogues because of fire and so forth. That's another reason why there's so much movement amongst the Caribbean islands of our Jewish ancestors. They're constantly changing who's in control of the island. If you fled Spain, the last thing you want is Spain to become in control of your island. So there's a lot of movement back and forth, but there's a lot of fire because they had wood timber to build with. That's what they had. There's a lot of water problem because of hurricanes. I mean, they have just a whole unique situation there, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But in the Virgin Islands, down where we're talking about here, if you go to the wiki page over on the far right, there's a heading that says Archives and Libraries and Societies. You can go there, and all of these are the main archives in the Caribbean on St. Thomas that you can find records of your people in St. Thomas, St. Croix, so forth, and where to find those records. So this is another great source of the wiki. That's why I put it there. But what kind of records do we have from St. Thomas? Well, we have a lot of census records. This is taken here from the 1846 census. We have 1841, 46, 50, 55, 57, 60, 70, 80, 90, 1901, 1911. So we have a lot of census records where the families are identified by religion. Now, there are many different ways they're identifying their Jewish families. And this one's always been one of my favorites. It's in that middle column. It says what kind of religion, and it says Jewish church. I appreciate they got the Jewish part. They may not have had the whole concept on what to call it, but hey, at least they got the Jewish, identified them as Jewish, right? So it's a great record. It gives the whole family there, gives the ages, where they were born, so forth, their occupations. And in fact, kind of funny, in 1870, now this is another page from a St. Thomas census, it gives their occupations. You know, at the top you have, clerk, and then you have all this other stuff. The very bottom lady on this, she's an 80-year-old lady. She says she's Hebrew and she's a widow, and her occupation is old lady. Now, if you can get paid for that, that's a great thing. But that's her occupation. She identifies there, the bottom entry on the far right, where she says she's an old lady. So, but let me show you a couple of the synagogue records from St. Thomas. And I've been doing a lot with these, and they amaze me. And these are problems that the Caribbean has that we may not get a lot of places. So you'll notice this is the synagogue records from recorded in 1877. That's the date up on the far left there. But you'll notice when you look at the entry, it says 1867. Well, it was a birth in 1860, but it's not recorded till 77. It's recorded 10 years later. And there's the date, October 9th, 1867. It gives you the name of the child, his parents. But then in the remarks, it says, born in this island and omitted to be registered on account of hurricane, earthquake, and subsequently his mother's death. So these are all the little hurdles they have to overcome in the Caribbean. They have they have the hurricanes, they have the earthquakes, and then in this case, his mother's death. But they also have some incredible records tied to this, some incredible things. Now, remember, we talked about the sheer number of families that were there up into the early 1830s. There were 60 families, not a huge amount. Great for a Caribbean island, but still, it's not a huge amount. But yet, you get records like this. This is a one that's being recorded in 1884, up on the left, you see 84. He was born in 78, so it's recorded 6 years later. Gives his names, his parents, where born to, and her maiden name, born Epstein, gives you her maiden name. His parents live in Russia, and he's being registered there because of his father's uh, request to reside there. So 6 years later, he's being registered. Now, when you go through these, this one that says the family's request, but when you go through the St. Thomas synagogue records, there are just entry after entry where it says the family is living somewhere else in the world. Uh, all through Europe, the U.S. There are even some in China, some other places where in some of them, I can almost track that those people never got within 1,000 miles of St. Thomas, but yet they're asking their children's births to be recorded in St. Thomas. I don't know why. I'm assuming maybe they had other family who moved there that we don't know about. We don't know what the reason may be exactly, but they are coming from all over the world requesting that their children be recorded in St. Thomas. It's a fascinating thing. There is a cemetery on St. Thomas. I don't think I included the pictures here, but there are 7,500 graves in that cemetery. And again, in 1830, there were 60 families. So the numbers don't always add up, makes you wonder what's going on. But as tied into St. Thomas, let's look at this. Here's the Nar family. Now, this is if David Nar was born in St. Thomas. He married in St. Thomas. He immigrated to Elizabethtown, New Jersey, where he was appointed mayor. He was the first Jewish mayor of a U.S. city in Elizabethtown in 1843. He purchased a newspaper, and it was shut down pretty quick because he said some things about President Lincoln and the Civil War. But the key thing is here is on the right. That is a pedigree chart of his family. We'll talk about these again in a minute, but this comes from a collection put together by Malcolm Stern. Malcolm Stern was the most prominent U.S. Jewish genealogical expert. He was a rabbi. He was based out of Cincinnati. People from all over the world would send him their documents, asking him for his help in finding their families. That's why you can see those pieces of tape on it. This probably arrived to him in a million pieces, and he put it back together. And if you can see it, I don't know how well you can, but right there in the center is David Nar, who we're talking about here. And if you go up, there's his generations up, there's generations down. These trees, some of these trees cover 10 to 20 generations on one pedigree chart. They're amazing. And I'll show you where you can access those in a minute. But so there's the Nar family. But here he is in the census, 1870 census in the US. And as you go down this, you can see that he came from St. Thomas. His wife was from St. Thomas, their oldest son. His daughter-in-law was from New Jersey. There was New York, and then you get back into St. Thomas and so forth. And so if you look at it here, there is David Nar married his wife, and then you can see that they're all St. Thomas people, both sides of the family, and it goes back way, way far. And St. Thomas is an incredible place, maybe the center of Jewish life in the Caribbean. If it's not there, it's going to be Curacao. Well, let's talk about Curacao for a minute. Curacao, there's the synagogue, but was established. The synagogue was established their congregation in 1651. In 1732, they built their synagogue. It is the oldest synagogue in continuous use in the Western Hemisphere. Now, there is a synagogue older in Newport, Rhode Island, but it's the key is the oldest synagogue in continuous use. The one in Newport kind of had to close down during the Revolutionary War for a couple of years, was turned into a hospital, but the one in Curacao is the oldest. See the names of some of the prominent early families. And these families, for the most part, went up to and established Newport, Rhode Island, Charleston, and New Orleans. So this is prominent families from the Caribbean, again, becoming the base of U.S. Jewish communities. So those that came to Curacao mostly came from the Amsterdam community. Beginning in 1639, it was the policy of the Amsterdam community to encourage their members to leave Holland and settle in the colonies. Again, they wanted to expand out. They advanced the expenses for the journey. Ledgers were kept in the Amsterdam community books of those accounts, and those ledgers started in about 1697. Now they have been published. This is a page out of that book. This is, again, you'll notice it comes from the American Jewish Archives. That is Malcolm Stern's archive where he was based. But as you can see on these, it gives you the year, it tells you how much money, all the family names, and so forth. Most all of these, there are some we don't know for sure, but most all of these went to Curacao. And from Curacao, their families came up into the US, a lot to Newport, Rhode Island. The Turro family, which was a prominent group of Dutch Jews that went to Curacao, went up, and the synagogue in Newport is the Turro Synagogue. They're a very prominent family there. The records from Curacao are a little different. They're just in date order. Now, however, this is the record of births in Curacao, but it's taken from death registers. I know that just does not quite set in as something we normally see. So what they've done is, as someone passes and they record it, they go back and they put the date of birth in. So these are in birth order. So there's the date, 50, we'll go right in the middle there, 5493. That's the year of birth, but they got that from a death register. And if you go to the next column, they died in 5572. So they're 79 years old, but they know the birth, so they're going back and dating it that way. So it's kind of a reverse way to get the birth in. Now, the problem with this is we don't know where that birth took place. It could be in the Caribbean, it could be in Amsterdam, it could be wherever. But we don't know. We know the death took place in Curacao, and that's where these are taken from. And other families there, again, back to Malcolm Stern, here's a tree he put together. In the bottom generation, and the next level up is his kids and so forth, and it branches out and keeps growing as you go up generations. So it's incredible. Let's talk about Jamaica. We've hit on them a few times. So in 1494, Luis de Torres arrived in Jamaica as the interpreter to Christopher Columbus, generally considered to be the first Jew in the New World. 1530, the first group of Portuguese Spanish Jews arrived in Spanish Town. 1655, the British gained control, and the Jews were permitted to worship in public. So they were there 150 years before they were given full freedoms, which is not an uncommon story. And Jews were granted citizenship by King Charles in 1660. This led to the Jews arriving from Brazil, from England, from British Guiana, and from Suriname. This really led to the flow into Jamaica. Now you'll notice that's 165 years into the Jewish establishment in Jamaica, but it's still only 40 years this side of the Mayflower. So the Mayflower lands, but yet the Jews in Jamaica already have a 150-year history. So then we move in 1671, the Jews of Jamaica petitioned to have the citizens of Jamaica petitioned to have the Jews expelled, and that was rejected. However, in 1693, a special tax was put on the Jews. This, as we all know from history, this is not an uncommon event throughout the world, taxes and so forth. By 1670, they were considered second-class citizens because of their religious beliefs. In 1783, more taxes were imposed. And in 1832, the Jewish community was granted official recognition and equality on the island. They were finally permitted to vote. So it took a while. They went through a lot, but they were finally permitted to vote. So what kind of records do we have from Jamaica? These are civil registration, the registration of birth, marriage, and death. Some people call it hatches, matches, and dispatches. But birth, marriage, and death from Jamaica, and you can see they're depending on, these are mostly the ones you're looking at are in the 1880s for the most part, but we have them from 1878 to 1930, gives the official government record. So it will not identify the fact that they were Jewish because it is the government record. It's not the synagogue record. Let's do one more. And this is where we're going to go into the book section. So if you go to that beginning search tab, this is St. Kitts, but if you go to that beginning search tab where it says search and it says books. So the books section, it's not only Family Search's book collection. Like I said earlier, we have 600,000 books in our collection. But what we've done is we've gone together with all kinds of other archives, all over the country, all over the world. And what everyone's doing, we put scanning equipment, digitizing equipment into their libraries, and everyone who has books that are not covered by copyright any longer, or the author or the publisher, whoever has given permission for it to happen, we have gone in and scanned these books. So this here is a list of St. Kitts and St. Thomas, some of the books. I just put in St. Thomas, and you can see it says that there are 534,000 search results. When you do this, you need to remember, not only is there books, there's publications, newspapers, maps, anything you can do that you can scan and digitize. But it comes up like this, and it's just a collection of books that will include those records. Now you can you can break it down, and you can put in there St. Thomas Jewish records, St. Kitts Jewish record. I just did this so you could see the variety. So the one that's in the upper right hand corner, it's got the red cover that you see there, the Register of St. Thomas, Middle Island, St. Kitts. Now, if you click on it, there it is. Now, this information, and you can, on your own screens, you'll be able to make this larger or whatever. You can see it's got a code on there for the library it came out of. It came out of the Getty Research Institute. It is church records and registers, so this is not a record of Jewish persons' deaths, but it says there's 76 pages, and if I hadn't cut it off, you'd see the little arrow off to the right and the left where you can just flip the pages. And when you do that, it looks like this. And it is just strictly that, birth, marriage, and death. But I think it's important you realize that there are records of other religions, other, people of other different religious beliefs that are there. And when I go into Barbados in just a second, I'm going to show you why that's so important. But the book section, you can go in there and you can read the books. You can do a search for them. You can go right down to them. So here's Barbados. Now, if you go to the research wiki, which we talked about earlier, and you just type in Barbados, you will see that it will bring you up. In this one, Barbados is not as full as like if you put Germany or Poland or whatever it may be. But it does give you the collections in front of you. It tells you how many records there are. Barbados Church Records, for example, has 1.4 million records. That one's an important one for us here in this, and I'll show you why in a minute. I know you keep saying, Todd, it's church records. It's not a synagogue. But I'm going to show you why that doesn't always hold true. And then if you go into those, these are the actual records. These are burial records from Barbados. It gives you a little more information. so forth. Then if you just, I'll just expand it up so you can read it more, but it gives you names and places and so forth. Now, why is it important to look at all church records, all religious records? This is why it's important. So this is the collection this comes from is Barbados church records, 1637 to 1887. You can quickly look at that and tell me that that's not a Barbados church record. That is the register of deaths in the Jewish community in 1778 to 1783, about a 5-year period. Well, why is it there? Well, let me tell you, I still can't answer that question. I was helping someone who had Church of England ancestry who had lost someone in Barbados. They were trying to find him. So I went into the Barbados church records, and they are, for the most part, exactly what you would think. They are Church of England, birth, marriage, and death of mostly British military and their families who were stationed in Barbados. But then, right in the middle of these records is what you see here. There was about 10 to 15 pages of the Jewish burials in Barbados from that time frame. It goes from about 1780 to maybe not quite 1800, but they're there. Why are they there? I can't tell you why they're there. When you look at the original of the pages before it from the Church of England to these, it's a different handwriting, it's a little different style. Obviously, the dates are different. Here we have the Hebrew date and so forth. Why are they there? I don't know. Whoever saved these records and put them into that collection so they wouldn't be lost, I don't know how you'd ever think them, but they did. And so they weren't lost. But you'll notice these are incredible records. If you go down, let's go to you'll see there's in 1780, there's 4 deaths on the same day. The 10th of October, 1780, you have Isaac Lindo, who was 54. So that puts him born in 1726. You have a 3-year-old, 13-year-old, 25-year-old. But you get some of these. If you go right up the top, when you see a widow up there who's 80, died in 1778. So she's born in 1698. These are early records. These are great records. But the 4 that died on the 10th of October, 1780, what is that all about? Well, it turns out that if you go into the history books, that is considered one of the top 10 hurricanes of all time. And there were 40,000 deaths. There were approximately 200 ships lost. It was devastating. 200-mile-an-hour winds. Just an absolutely devastating story, but they're recorded there. The point is, if you can't find your Jewish records, you can't find the records of your Jewish ancestors, don't be afraid to look at records where you would normally never expect to find them, because in this case, you see them right there. It won't take long to check some of the records, but so forth. So let's move to Trinidad and Tobago. I think this might be the last one of these, and then we'll talk about a couple other things. First Jews arrived in 1700. The biggest wave came from Portugal in late 1800s. Small groups came from Curacao to St. Thomas. You can see the constant moving around amongst the islands. Turn of the 20th century, there were only 30 families. During the 30s, Jews began arriving from Europe, and the first synagogue was built. By the end of the 1930s, the Jewish population approached 600. So it went from 30 practicing Jews to 600 Jews in about 30 years. Very open to the Jewish community. But then what happened? World War II, many of the Jews were interned in camps as enemy aliens. And we heard that too many times. They were freed but still faced restrictions. This forced most to start leaving Trinidad. So Trinidad had a huge population, Jewish population growth, and then it went away quickly, and that's why. So let's talk about some other things in addition to family search that may help you. So let's talk about that Malcolm Stern collection. As we talked about, that is the records of Malcolm Stern, one of the great Jewish genealogists. This is the first American Jewish families. This is one of his books, but it's at the Malcolm Stern collection of the American Jewish Archives. So it's AmericanJewishArchives.org. These books talk about the early Jewish families that came into the U.S., and that is where a lot of those pedigrees I showed you came at. This is what most of them look like, where he's typed it up so he can follow it. But as you look at all that, there's multiple generations. You have Curacao on here, you have St. Thomas, and so forth. And these are all families that came up to the U.S. and were very prominent in the U.S. Here's a little closer in on this, a little further back. But these are prominent Jewish communities all through, from New Orleans all the way up to Rhode Island. There was such a strong influence, but you can find a lot of those here. This is a great website. Now, has not been updated. It's basically, I don't want to say it's shut down because they have left it up for you to take advantage of all the records. DutchJewry.org. You can go in on the far left there, you'll see all the different places you can go in. You can go into family trees and type your name in, and there's some incredible family trees of your families. There's circumcision records on here. There's census, there's birth, marriage, and death. All kinds of incredible records. You can see the latest screenshot I have is 2012. It's been a while, but what they have on there is gold. It just really is. And it's incredible records. So you can go on there and see that. Another great one is the jewishphotolibrary.com. What this is a gentleman who's going around. He said his motto is documenting the Jewish world one photograph at a time. He's going through the synagogues. He's going through the cemeteries. He's going into the Jewish museums, everywhere he can, and he's documenting it with photos. A lot of the Caribbean cemeteries are documented on here. A lot of Spain and Portugal. You just go down the list. He's got right there on the right. He's got Cuba, Barbados, Aruba. You can see a list of the old cemeteries, and he's got the photos. He's done an incredible, incredible work. But you can go there and you can access those, and that may help you. At the time the screenshot was done, it says there's like 53,000 photographs. He's got a lot more than that now. It's incredible work he's done. Another one, this is the Knowles collection. We're going to talk about the Knowles collection in just a moment. This is a blog that talks about the Knowles collection. So knowlescollection.blogspot.com. And up there where the Israeli flag is on the upper right below it, it says accessing the Knowles collection. So if everything I'm about to tell you doesn't make sense, you can go there and it'll walk you through how to do it. But what is the Knowles collection? So let me just tell you really briefly. The Knowles collection it's now, and this is a whole nother topic we could discuss another time. It started out with my own family history, then it started being added to. So it's now a collection of the Jewish records of 1.5 million Jews around the world. Their records are on here and so forth. It is broken down into areas. One of those areas is South America and the Caribbean. And so it's sourced. I'll show you what it looks like. If you go to that first page where you type in, the search tab on family search, one of the categories is genealogies. And if you go down there on the left, you can type in, I typed in Caribbean and it came up. The first one there is Jewish Families, Knowles Collection of South America and the Caribbean, 1400s, 1900s. And if you click on that, it takes you to this search page. And this is just the search bar to get into that collection. Again, it's all free at Family Search. And you get into that right there, and it brings up the individual pieces. So here are some of the people highlighted. These are all, St. Thomas, and then there's some St. Kitts. But it gives the person, it gives the birth record. On the far right, it also includes the spouse and the children and so forth. If they're in the record and it's added to it, then it's there. And if you highlight one of those people on the left and you click on it, it takes you to a working pedigree where you can see the pedigree chart. It's all sourced. It's all linked as, father to son. It's all surname searchable, linked and sourced, and you can go in there and you can see the records, um, and it will take you to where you need. It'll show you what's available. Hopefully, it's a foundation you can use to build on your own family. It's being added to daily. In fact, I'm doing some work on it right now in St. Thomas, some more records. So it's constantly being added to and updated. So I hope that will help you as well. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, there's the promised email address. You are more than welcome to email me at that at any time with any questions you may have, any comments. If you go into the Knowles collection and you think something is in error or needs to be added to, please let me know and we'll go in there. I have had, in fact, yesterday I had one where I got an email from a lady saying, in the Caribbean collection, you have a husband and wife and 3 children. Would you like the records of the other 3 children? She had more family information than I did going through the records I was available were available to me. And so we're able to add those additional 3 children that she had that I didn't. So it's a work in progress. It's 1.5 million people now, but it's about 25,000 in the Caribbean, but about 1.5 million, and it's added to daily and new sources added all the time. And I think it may be of help. I hope it has. And if you are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Woohoo! Oops, there we go. Thank you, Todd. I learned a bunch
Absolutely.
of cool stuff. My family went to Cuba, and they were not Sephardic, but now I know other places I can look. Um, believe it or not, the only questions that got put in chat so far are questions from me.
There you go.
Horrible person that I am.
Everyone wants to talk to
Let's
you.
see. Back. Okay. When you were talking about the birth registrations where they were doing it by the given name,
Hmm.
okay, the first thing that came to my mind was actually that means they were dealing with a pretty short list of given names to be able to organize them that way.
You would never be able to do that in a non-Jewish community, I think.
Yeah. Is there anything that indicates why they chose that method to register them?
There is no comments with it, no directions on why it was done. It's
No,
just the way they.
no historical analogs of anywhere
Nope,
else it was done
nope.
that way.
It's just the way it appears, and hey, it's
Wow,
different, but yeah,
definitely different. Mm.
yeah.
And then the other question is about the deaths when they did them by, figuring out when they were born.
Hmm.
Again, is there anything to indicate why they did them that way? Is there an analog anywhere else that's similar? I mean, it's so
No.
unusual. Mm.
Yeah, it's very strange. And what's even stranger is, okay, if you didn't do it that way and you didn't put the date of birth, why not tell us where they were born? If they made the if they came from Spain and Portugal, it would be great to know so and so born in Spain dies in Curacao, but there's no indication. And there's no exact birth date. So obviously
Is
all
it,
they've done is taken the
however
age,
old someone said they were and subtracted?
subtracted it. Yeah. So it's a great idea, but as long as you do it that way, you might as well go one step
Yeah,
further and do
we
it
want the
correctly.
rest of the information.
Exactly. Let's fill in the gaps here.
Okay. Let's see. The records that were in with the church records,
Hmm.
is that the same handwriting as the church records?
No, it's completely different. And in fact, to use modern terms, as you're going through the Church of England record and you get to those records, those 10 or 20 pages, to use a modern term, it looks like someone cut and pasted it into the collection. It almost looks like they took those sheets of paper that they had and back however many years ago, someone just stuck them in there and taped them into the collection. They're a little off centered. It's a different handwriting. It's a heavier handwriting, and it just everything about it just looks a little different. But there's no indication of who did it or why.
They're leaving us with more questions than answers.
I remember when I was a little kid, and we would like find a leaf we wanted to preserve. You'd find the heaviest book, a dictionary, and put it in the pages and shut the book. it looks so much like that. Oh, we got these pages. Let's open a book, stick it in there, and shut the book. And you forgot it's there. It's what it looks like. But
Wow.
yeah,
We got a comment from Sandy. Her grandfather landed in Curacao in 1931. Her mother was raised there with Ashkenazi community, not Sephardic.
wow,
And so she
wow.
recognized a bunch of the names from the examples that you were using.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, so that has been superseded. I gave you that. Was there much intermarriage between Jewish men and black women?
There was, no, I don't know about, I'd say a lot, but there was obviously some. It's one of those things, it was what, it is what it is, but uh, there was a slave trade. We can't deny it. But a lot of, the whole Dutch West Indies journey, just, we leave Amsterdam with this, we go down to North Africa, we sell it, we pick up this, we take it to uh, the Caribbean, we sell it there, we pick up the rum, we bring it back to Amsterdam. That whole cycle just kind of led to it. And yeah, so there was absolutely.
Out of curiosity, my own follow-up to that, is there documentation of that, or is it just from information, piecing it together based on what we can find now?
In some of the records, it will, for example, a woman on a marriage record, in parentheses, it will say um, black, Negro, something like that, colored, something like that. It'll say it in parentheses. So you
Okay,
do
so
see
there's
it.
documentation. Cool.
Hmm.
Okay, and Yitzhak has his hand raised. You can turn on your camera too and go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Yitzhak. Now you're not. Hello? You? What happened? I don't know if you have unmuted. Did you step away from the computer? I don't know what happened to Yitzhak. Does anybody else have questions? Questions. Come on, Todd likes questions.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know what happened to Yitzhak, and nobody else seems to have questions. But
I'll ask a question.
we got a question.
So, as an amateur historian, I've been very interested in the 30 Years' War, its impact on the Ashkenazi community and the disruption it produced, 1618 to 1638. There must have been some migration out of Western Europe. Did any of those people end up in the Caribbean? And I'm curious about my own family. The family names were Pike and Rosenbaum.
I don't find a lot of those areas going to the Caribbean during that time. I hate to say none, but if there was, it was a very small amount. Where are your Rosenbaums from?
Well, that's why I'm here. The progenitor of the family, a Solomon G. Rosenbaum, arrived in Charleston around 1850 and said he was from Barbados.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I'm intending to go pursue.
Very
Then the
nice.
Pike family were on Long Island probably by the 1830s. The oral tradition, I was told, was that they came from Amsterdam and were Sephardic.
Very nice. And both of those situations totally go into the whole narrative of the Caribbean communities coming up and being such a great influence on the U.S. The Amsterdam community is very well published, very active. There are societies in Amsterdam where you get the documentation. That website Dutch Jewry could also be a big help.
Fine.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Okay, Yitzhak is back. Yitzhak, what's your
Nice.
question? Don't forget to unmute. You're still Yitzhak, you're muted.
Mute. All right.
There
Laura
you
Laura
Hi.
Liebman.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. Hi. Okay. Laura Liebman wrote a little bit about that, like slavery, domestics, liberated slaves. Now the question is, have you found though, let's say Jewish slave owners, maybe let's say two timing, or in the records, what is the status of a slave, or a liberated slave, or a domestic? Because they may not actually be officially, let's say, part of the Jewish community.
True.
So how from what you know in the records, how can you find them?
So the records themselves do not identify them as their status. The records themselves may say married a, I think more often than not it says colored, but it doesn't identify. It doesn't give us enough in the record to say, is this, like what you're saying, their status within the Jewish community? Are they Jewish? Are they not? Is it strictly a marriage of slave owner? We don't know. The records don't tell us enough. So
And in terms of migration, can you follow though? Obviously, we're talking about the records in the Caribbean, but from the collections, is there any way to follow, let's say, when people left Curacao, is there any way to follow that a certain enclave was formed, or a certain group of people within, let's say, several decades in the early 20th century migrated to the New York area?
It gets easier in that you can actually, for the most part, you can still see the New York arrivals, the passenger lists coming in, because they did go by ship for the most part. So you can go into the New York arrivals at Ellis Island and you can see the ships coming in, and you will see large amounts of ships that say Hebrews from Curacao and so forth. You can also do that with New Orleans. A lot came into New Orleans, but they came on ships out of the Caribbean, and so that's where you'd find those. That's and you can document it. Yes, that way you can see the larger groups coming in. In fact, the easiest place to do it is off Ancestry. Go to their immigration and just type in where are they from, and put Curacao, where are they heading, put New York, and you'll see the large groups coming in, and it'll be, you can have 30, 40 people on one ship and maybe 30, 40 on the next ship, so forth, but you will see groups coming in that way.
Thank you.
You what?
And that makes me have a question. Are there outgoing passenger lists available from any of those countries that you know of?
Not that have been generally released. You can contact the National Archive in each country. The Jamaican Archives is great, so forth. You can try it, but see, in the early immigration back and forth, there's not a lot of record of it, because they're leaving because here comes a hurricane, let's make a run for it, or they're leaving because, hey, Spain has taken over from France, we got to get out of here while we can before they put restrictions. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity to sit and document everything. It was let's grab a boat and go. So it is harder, absolutely.
I think I was actually thinking of more recent things, like around the period that Yitzhak was talking about,
Yeah.
where you have, because and not every country kept track of outgoing passenger lists. That's kind of
That's
why
true.
I was wondering.
That's true. And especially where you have a community, all those islands that are based off boats and ships and stuff, they just didn't document them all. So
Too many people going on ships.
yeah, exactly.
Well, we've had several people ask very nice questions. If nobody else has any questions, I will let Todd have the rest of his Sunday back.
And you have my email.
Right? Oops. What is it? It's Knowles WT, right?
Yep.
WT
Yep.
at
FamilySearch.org.
Thank you very much. Very enlightening and gives me some direction, which was lacking.
Oh, wonderful.
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 Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Todd. And as I said, everybody, this is being recorded, so we will have it available on our YouTube channel, hopefully pretty soon, because I'm feeling better again. Thank you, Todd. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you,
rest of your
everyone.
day. Thank you, everybody, for
you.
coming, and please look for us next month. Bye.
Okay, bye.